I'm breaking down the keys behind Josh Allen's special performance and how the defense was able to get a few clutch stops against the Bengals today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Well, folks, welcome in. I've taken the time to study the ALL-22 coaches film from the Bills' 39-34 win over the Bengals, and I want to share with you my top takeaways on this episode. We'll do studs and duds. We'll talk snap counts. We'll get into my keys for victory and how that played out. We'll talk about the defense, but I want to start with the offensive side of the football and specifically Josh Allen. And he had a great game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Completed 22 of 28 passes for 251 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. And I think there was a lot of stuff here in terms of the game plan and the intent of the offense that was really important for Josh Allen being able to produce like this. And I think it starts with play action. This was a heavy play action game for the Bills offense. 47% play action rate. And you know me, I think that magic number is 30%. Well, let's go ahead and go 47%. I'll never be mad about that. On play action passes, Josh Allen was 10 of 13 for 135 yards and a touchdown. And what this really unlocked for Buffalo and stress for Cincinnati was tight ends. We talked about it all week long. Cincinnati can't defend tight ends going into this game. They'd given up 250 more yards and 5 more touchdowns to tight ends than any other team. And the Bills obviously have a nice group of tight ends, especially with Kincaid back, and that needed to be a big part of this game plan. Well, it was. It absolutely was. And one of the worst parts of the Bengals' bad defense is the linebackers. These guys are really, really struggling. They're playing 2 rookies and a journeyman in Oren Brooks, and they get twisted up all the time. And when you threaten them with play fakes, boy, they are in trouble. They get sucked right up, and that's how the Bills started the game. Play action, Dawson knocks over the middle of the field, and those linebackers were humming downhill. Humming. Play fake to James Cook, and, well, you're wrong. It's going to be a pass over your head to the tight end in the middle of the field. And so I loved the play action usage, especially to unlock your tight ends, especially to challenge this Bengals defense in the way that they've struggled the most this year of any team. I really enjoyed the utilization of run-pass option screens to Dalton Kincaid. The Bills hit 2 of these for really nice chunks where it's a screen to Kincaid, but there's like a run tag with it. They could hand off the ball, but Josh is able to pull it and really go sidearm and slot it in there to Kincaid. And they had 2 really big completions on that. And it's a nice kind of evolvement of the screen game. This screen game is looking a lot different. I know that everybody wants to complain about bubble screens to Khalil Shakir. That's really come down a lot in recent weeks. And the production in the screen game has been going to Ty Johnson. And now in this game, we saw Dalton Kincaid get some opportunities. And those are some very, very effective plays. I thought that was a nice new wrinkle to this offense was the RPO screen game to Dalton Kincaid for a couple of nice completions. I also felt like the Bills worked 2-back stuff a little bit more, particularly in the passing game. and not necessarily with Reggie Gilliam. You saw plays with Ty Johnson and Ray Davis together, Ty Johnson and James Cook together. And when the Bills threw the ball with 2 running backs on the field, they were 5 of 6 for 36 yards and a touchdown, and also were able to gain 3 passing first downs. And being able to run out of these pony backfields, if you will, when you have 2 actual running backs, not a running back and a fullback, obviously it means a lot for some of the chances you can create throwing the ball. But the Bills have now run it out of that a little bit too. Think about some of those handoffs to Ty Johnson when he's kind of a offset, almost like a fullback type player. And they're handing it to Ty Johnson, and then they're also working some other action with James Cook and Josh Allen with the kind of the way they're playing out the play. And it just puts a lot on the defense to be disciplined with where their eyes are, because if their eyes are on Cook and Allen, they're going to lose sight of Ty Johnson. And on the play that Ty Johnson fell, that was actually this exact situation where Ty took the ball from that offset kind of fullback spot, and obviously had a great run. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to stay up, but that was a play where Cook and Allen were on the field, and Ty Johnson received that ball, and you could tell that the presence of Allen and Cook influenced that defense to kind of work the opposite direction that Ty Johnson went with the football, and was able to create a huge lane. I also feel like the Bills using tight ends to chip more, which has obviously happened a lot since the Texans game. And, they got Deion Dawkins back this week, but you still played Ryan Vandemark out there, and they helped a little with the tight ends chipping in this game. And those delayed releases have been really meaningful for this offense. Josh Allen was able to get a couple of nice completions to tight ends that were initially staying in to help with the pass protection, but then get into space. And by the time they get out into space, the coverage is not really thinking about them, and they have to adjust, mid-snap to an eligible that they're not counting on. And whether it was the Jackson Hawes game-winning touchdown or another big play over the middle of the field to Dawson Knox, the Bills have found some production while using these tight ends to stay in. So that's nice little consequence maybe of that ugly game in Houston, is that you're using these tight ends to chip more, and then I think it's creating a little bit more in the passing game, despite not having them in the route distribution to begin with. Wanted to comment a little bit about a couple of the touchdown passes that Josh Allen had. The Khalil Shakir touchdown was really, really special. I think Josh extended that play 2 different times and is able to fit that ball right over the head of the linebacker. And one thing to keep in mind whenever you're considering a decision that a quarterback makes, when the defender's back is to the quarterback, they can only defend the width of their shoulders. That's all they can do. And so you could throw it right over the top of their head. And as long as your receiver's ready for the ball, it's a good throw. And that was exactly what Josh did on that throw to Khalil. And that linebacker obviously was underneath, but his back was to Josh. He didn't know. And when your back's to the quarterback, you can only defend the width of your shoulders. And that was just a really nice throw, a really good decision, unbelievable job extending that play 2 different times, and Shakir hauling it in. It's an awesome touchdown. Then the other touchdowns were the 2 to the tight ends. We talked about Jackson Hawes already. It was a delayed release. The Bills were setting up a look to kind of work Gabe Davis across the formation and attack the pylon in the back left corner since he was ready for it. And because Jackson Hawes stayed in to help, he releases eventually, and they're not thinking about him, and Josh Allen's able to hit him wide open for a touchdown. The other touchdown pass was to Dalton Kincaid. And when I watched that play, the first thing that came to mind for me was, in some of these high leverage moments, good play callers should think about players and not plays, right? Players, not plays. And Dalton Kincaid's your best passing game weapon. How do you come up with an opportunity to get him the football? And I thought it was really good design to free him up one-on-one with a safety, where it's kind of a 3-strong look. So he's in somewhat of a trip set, and Gabe Davis runs a drag route that influences the coverage inside. They have Cook on a flat route that kind of influences the coverage outside. And now you're in a situation where it's Kincaid one-on-one with a safety. all you ask him to do is cross his face, establish that inside leverage, and Josh Allen will dot the I. That's exactly what happened. And so really enjoyed the design, architecture, intent of the passing offense, the tight ends involvement, some good involvement at running backs as well, and Josh Allen making good, accurate throws for the most part in the game. And it was a very efficient and very productive day for the Bills passing the football. I'll give you some additional comments about some of the players, including Keon Coleman, when I get through snap counts. But we'll get to the rushing offense and react to my keys and how that played out here on the other side of it. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on the action as it unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. The receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. We've seen that a couple of weeks in a row, right? Christian Benford with a scoop and score against the Steelers, and then, of course, in this game. And FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. They have live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet on the next touchdown score, drive result, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap. And look, the Bills, they open up as 1.5-point road favorites in New England. The over-under for that game is 49.5, so check it out if you want to get in on the action. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Welcome back, folks. Let's talk about the Bills' rushing offense against Cincinnati. They run the ball 29 times for 183 yards and a touchdown. Now, 5 of those carries and 84 of those yards were Josh Allen scrambles, right? Obviously, some huge scrambles in the game. You think about the 3rd and 15 to ice it. You think about the 40-yard touchdown. But he had a couple of other first down runs as well. So he was really electric with his legs in this game, and a big part of why the Bills are able to win. Now, you might be thinking, well, the box score says 9 rushes for 78 yards for Josh Allen. You're not wrong about that. He lost 3 yards on one design carry. It was after the Ty Johnson slip up on the 3rd down. And then he had a couple of kneel downs as well. So in true scramble numbers, he is 5 for 84. But of course, the overall raw box score is going to tell you 9 for 78. But in the traditional running game, the Bills are okay. They were 5th best in success rate this past week. And I thought the Bills should have leaned more into zone runs. They went gap runs 3-1 in this game, which is a distribution that I wouldn't have had. I think this was the type of game where I would implement way more zone runs. And thinking about those big monster defensive tackles that they have in BJ Hill and TD Slayton, I'd want to get those guys moving horizontal. And they don't necessarily have like big physical edge setting defensive ends. And so I'd want them going horizontal. And those linebackers that are no good, I'd want them like thinking about how they're going to play laterally and trigger downhill, as opposed to, the gap runs are more predicated on displacement, right? You're going to move bodies out of the way. You have a defined track. And if you can move people out of the way, that's great. But I think it's a little bit easier to play those runs. And so if I were the Bills, I definitely would have had more of a zone heavy rushing attack. Certainly not 3-1 on gap schemes in this game. I think whenever the Bills' run game is not great, right, it's usually at least good. But I think this was a game where it was good, not great. The one thing that I think is consistent from the defense, and this is something to be mindful of against New England, and I thought New England did this as well as any team has this year against the Bills, is those defensive backs, they will slow play it, right? And so the Bills will run a lot of condensed formations where they'll run the football, right? So you're kind of inviting everyone closer to the action. So you'll have some closed formations where you're not really going to have a receiver outside. It's going to be all right there, kind of jumbled up on the line of scrimmage. And so that kind of invites everyone together. And when those defensive backs that are now brought into the fit, and even players from depth, safeties will kind of play in lower alignments, when they're willing to slow play and not overcommit, that's when teams have the most success. Because, well, James Cook what does he really excel at? He's a really phenomenal cutback runner. He's a really, really good spill runner. And when your DBs don't overcommit and stay disciplined, they're going to be in a lot better position to make some tackles. And so I think at times you've seen teams do this. Certainly no team did that better than the Patriots, but Cincinnati did at times in this game. And that's something that the Bills are going to have to be mindful of as they're looking to run the ball down the stretch in these bigger games, right? Obviously playoffs, and you need to stack some wins here for positioning and all those types of things. You got to be mindful of how do you make teams pay for slow playing their DBs, right, against the run. And so that's something to be mindful of. All right, my keys when we go back to the primer episode, this is something I started last week in our all-22 reviews that I intend on carrying forward, is I want to talk about the keys that I give you in those episodes, and then how did that play out? Did it matter? Was that something that I had the right feel for? And so let's do that now. My keys for the Bills offense against the Bengals defense was, number one, to finish drives, number two, to work the middle of the field to tight ends and slots, and number three, to let James cook. So finishing drives, the Bills went 3 for 5 in the red zone. And so you don't love having a couple of empty possessions in the red zone. Of course, one of those was courtesy of a James Cook fumble on 1st and goal from the 2. And then the other was after the sequence after Ty Johnson fell down and wasn't able to finish that run. Those were your 2 empty or touchdown-less red zone possessions. I think what made up for those moments was scoring from distance twice, right? You had a Josh Allen 40-yard touchdown run, and you also had a Christian Benford pick 6. I think that helped overcome leaving what I thought was clearly 11 points on the board. And so I think I was correct that, this wasn't the type of game that you could settle for field goals. I think Sean McDermott coached that way for the most part. And I think finishing drives was a factor. And despite having 2 failures at doing so, the 2 touchdowns from distance helped overcome that. I said that the Bills needed to attack the middle of the field and work the ball to tight ends and slots. Boy, did they ever do that. 20 of 26 throws were between the numbers. Now, Josh Allen had 28 passing attempts. 2 of those were throwaways. So we're talking about targeted throws here. 20 of 26 between the numbers. It sounds like Joe Brady and I were synced up on that for sure. And then when it comes to the tight ends and slots, Josh Allen was 13 of 18 for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns to players aligned in the slot or as an inline player. So that was absolutely spot on. And then I said, let James cook. Well, James had 18 rushes for 80 yards, 2 catches for 31 yards, so 20 touches for 111 yards. I think it was a really solid game for him. Certainly some blunders, right? 2 fumbles and a false start, like definitely some mistakes. But I think they involved James Cook a pretty appropriate amount. He wasn't able to really, break a long one. He had some longer runs, but the explosive big from distance run wasn't necessarily there. I think that they involved James Cook to an appropriate level, but obviously this wasn't 35 touches like it was. So I think I was kind of on that. Let's do offensive snap counts here. The Bills ran 64 plays offensively. Josh Allen on the field for all of them. James Cook, 48 of 64 snaps. Ty Johnson, 16. Reggie Gilliam, 15. Ray Davis, only 4, which is interesting because this was a gap-heavy run day, and Ray Davis is better at the gap run. So I thought he'd kind of been playing a little bit better. I'm surprised that he didn't get a little bit more run in this one. At tight end, Dawson Knox, 35 of 64 snaps. What a game he had, right? Incredibly efficient catching the football. I mean, I wish he could have squeezed that tight end, that touchdown opportunity that he had. Obviously, Jackson Hawes scores on the next play, but that would have been quite the exclamation point on a really good game for Dawson Knox. Jackson Hawes, 34 snaps. Dalton Kincaid, 22. Welcome back, Kincaid. It's good to see him out there. I'm sure he's battling it a little bit with the knee, but obviously a positive contribution in this game. At wide receiver, Gabe Davis played the most snaps, 37. Tyrell Shavers, 36. Khalil Shakir, 32. Brandon Cooks, 23. And Keon Coleman, 18. That's where Keon's got to be, right? Like, I take myself right back to those earlier in the season conversations where it's like, there's just no justification for Keon Coleman in the role that he's in. And this is more what it needs to be. You're playing, I don't know, like the least amount of snaps of any receiver. You get a few targets, and that's it. And he made a couple of catches in this game, but also on the near interception, that was a lazy route, right? Like he had good pace into the route. Like it wasn't a sellout and push hard vertical, but you ran the route with good tempo, but then major throttle down into the break. And then he rounded it 3 steps. It needed to be a hard horizontal cut. And he's rounding it 3 steps and pretty much just opening up the opportunity for DJ Turner to undercut. Like you got to maintain leverage. You got to have a hard horizontal break and make that DB play through you. And he was lazy. And there's other routes where I thought they were lazy too. So it's like, okay, dude, well, if you're not going to sell out for the 18 snaps, you're not going to get more. And so not really loving where that's going. And then, of course, the offensive line, the 5 starters, Deion Dawkins, David Edwards, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, and then at right tackle, Ryan Vandemark. They played all 64 snaps, and I thought this is a little fun nugget. Ryan Vandemark has now started 5 games for the Bills in his career. The Bills have won all 5, so that's really good that they've been able to get the wins with Ryan Vandemark stepping in for Spencer Brown. That's what you're looking for out of a quality backup. All right, we got more to do. We'll talk defense here, the entire third segment, and of course, studs and duds. We'll do that next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. You know, there's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. Right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All of their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Switching to Mint lets you keep your same coverage for a lower price. Setup only takes a few minutes, and you can bring your own phone and number without any issues. The service is fast, super reliable, even on the go, and it feels good knowing that I'm not overpaying just to stay connected. So turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Mobile unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required, which is $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees, initial plan term only. Greater than 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. All right, let's talk about this Bills defense that found a way to get some big stops and some big takeaways later in that game. Joe Burrow, we'll talk about the passing defense. Joe Burrow goes 25 of 36, 284 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, of course, the 2 interceptions. Joe Burrow's really good, right? I mean, this guy, I've said it once, I'll say it again. He executes the passing offense at the highest level of any player in the league. Timing, anticipation, accuracy, it is really, really good. And so you have this type of quarterback, and I actually think the snow helped. I think the snow helped that. Because the Bills' pass rush that has been non-existent, like, struggled as well in this game. And even if these pass rushers were able to get a step, it's very difficult for them to turn, right? So you got to be able to turn and get to the quarterback, and it was all just slow burn and took a lot of extra steps. It was a tough day to win those one-on-one pass rushes when you're already kind of not that good at it to begin with. And so that combined with, all right, you're trying to mirror and match on the back end, and your margin for error is already really small against Burrow and these receivers. And now it's even more difficult to transition and plant and drive. And Joe Burrow obviously found a lot of success throwing the football. Now, the Bills found a lot of success not allowing Jamar Chase to kill him. And I think obviously a lot of that goes to Christian Benford and the job he did in this game. Had several one-on-one reps, but also the Bills did have some intent about having some safety help over top. So they played a lot of man coverage with Christian Benford, but also made sure that there was a leverage safety over top on a lot of those reps. I think one of the biggest differences as the game moved along was the Bills' willingness to blitz. And I don't really recommend blitzing Joe Burrow at all. But under these circumstances, when you're talking about the challenges I already presented with the pass rush, with really your ability to cover and change directions, also with Joe Burrow working back from that toe, right? Like, it's not right. He's playing with a weird shoe, and you can tell that there are times that affects him. That's when you want to heat him up. And at a minimum, like, you're not necessarily going to get free runners at him and get him on the ground over and over again, but it hurries his process. And it forces him to find throwing platforms quicker than he really wants to. And there were times when the Bills were able to dial up a blitz. Maybe you would count it as a pressure, maybe not, but the threat of that coming affected Joe Burrow's sequencing. And there was a lot of throws where he just couldn't transfer his weight from his back foot to his front foot. And that front foot was like really firm and straight. And if it affected his accuracy at times, just a little bit, right? And you're looking for stuff in the margins. The Bills also really ramped up the blitz as the game moved along. In the first half, the Bills only blitzed Joe Burrow on 16% of his dropbacks. In the second half, it was 44%. I think he had 18 dropbacks in the second half, 19 in the first half. 16% blitz rate in the first half, 44% in the second half. And again, I don't think it's a winning formula against Joe Burrow, but under those circumstances, I think it was something you needed to be willing to do, and I thought it helped the Bills get some stops there and force some inaccurate throws from Joe Burrow. Obviously, Cam Lewis and Taron Johnson had a rough game. There was a lot of intent to go after matchups there, and they gave up a good amount of production. Cam Lewis, a couple of really ugly missed tackles, and both of them, getting kind of twisted up in coverage and not really being able to stay in phase. I thought Trey White and Max Hairston had some ups and downs. Trey White, I mean, really, they gave up some production. They were pretty close in coverage, and both gave up touchdowns to T. Higgins. With Trey White's touchdown that he gave up to T. Higgins, Jordan Hancock left him out to dry. He was supposed to be providing inside help, and he drove down on like an outbreaker from Gesicki and exposed that inside leverage that Trey White thought he was going to have some help. Max Hairston gave up a touchdown to T. Higgins as well. He was really close, and I think you can argue that might have been OPI. But ultimately, I think one of the big things for Maxwell Hairston that I kind of noticed in watching him so far in his career, and I'm mostly very, very satisfied with Max Hairston, but you can tell that he really trusts his speed, and he should. He should trust his speed. But you also got to get into the space. You got to get into that receiver space. And so I think sometimes when he transitions and he flips his hips, he just knows that he can turn and run with anybody. But turn and run with anybody, but get in that hip pocket and really make it tough for them to establish a leverage advantage, right? And start to work some physicality to pin routes and squeeze. I think it's really good for him to get these reps that he's getting. I think it's really good stuff to be coached through, but that's kind of the common denominator. When he gives up something, it's like an over-reliance on speed and less of a willingness to just get into their space. And so that's one thing I'm looking for out of Max down the stretch. Run defense was really good. The Bengals ran the ball 19 times for 62 yards. That's the fifth lowest amount of rushing yards of any team in Week 14. The Bills did not miss a tackle against the run. I think that's 2 weeks in a row that they did not miss a tackle against the run. Interestingly enough, they came in, Cincinnati did, wanting to run gap schemes. They ran 12 gap runs and 6 zone runs, and they were under 3 yards a carry on gap runs. And they were 3.5 yards per carry on zone runs. I could understand if I were going to play the Bills, I'd probably want to do some gap runs because I don't think their defensive tackles are very firm against the run. But I thought the Bills, they battled up front in this game with how they competed for their gaps. I thought Deion Walker in particular, Daquan Jones did a solid job there. And then I thought there were some really strong contributions from Shaq Thompson, of course, is a downhill player. He's really good. I thought Jordan Poyer had some really good fills from depth, and so did Cole Bishop. I thought those three guys were able to take advantage of some of the work that they did up front to keep those guys clean and get downhill and make some plays. So I would shout out Deion Walker, Daquan Jones, Shaq Thompson, Jordan Poyer, and Cole Bishop for their contributions and kind of bottling up the run in this game. My keys for the Bills' defense against this offense. Where two-man coverage, got to manufacture some pass rush, and that your offense needs to help. And so let's talk about that. Number one was that I thought the Bills needed to run too high man coverage. Well, boy, did they ever. They had a 10% uptick in man coverage, and they had the highest rate of two-man coverage of any defense in Week 14 by far. They also had a 20% increase in too high middle of the field open coverages. Ran it 76% of the time against Cincinnati, which is 20% higher than their season average. So yes, they absolutely made the adjustments for this game that I thought they should when it comes to their coverage shells that they presented. A lot more two-man, a lot of too high middle of the field open. I think that was the right thing to do based on these matchups. And so we were in sync, me and McDermott and Babbage. I said that the Bills needed to manufacture some pass rush, and I talked about ramping up the blitz. And they did. And they were well above their season average in blitzing Joe Burrow, I think by about 20%. And so they didn't get a ton of pressure. Like, don't get me wrong, there wasn't a ton of pressure. But they did things to help affect Joe Burrow in ways that not necessarily you're heating up throws, but that threat of pressure, stressing the protection schemes, maybe got the ball out a little bit quicker and messed up some of his sequencing at time, like just doing enough to affect him a little bit. And so I think that they were intentional about finding some unique ways to rush Joe Burrow. And then my last key was that the offense just kind of needed to keep the pressure on Cincinnati. And it's a 39-34 ball game. It was kind of played out like I think most people expected it to. And I think the offense mostly did a good job of keeping that pressure. And then the defense obviously did their part with some big stops, a couple of huge takeaways, obviously, between the Epinesa interception and the Christian Benford pick six. Defensive snap counts. The Bills played 60 snaps of defense. We'll do defensive end first. A.J. Epinesa, 49 of 60 snaps. Greg Rousseau, 45 of 60 snaps. T.J. Sanders, 18. I thought this was probably T.J. Sanders' best game as a defensive end. I still hate that he's playing defensive end, but I thought he had some of his best impact, especially as a run defender in this one. Morgan Fox played 11 snaps, and boy, he looked like a guy that wasn't ready to go. I'll tell you that. It looked like a guy that's been out of football for a few months and has had a couple of weeks, and he didn't look like a guy that was primed to do much for this defense. But hopefully that'll maybe uptick as the weeks move along. But that was not a very impressive debut from Morgan Fox. Javon Solomon played 6 snaps. At D-tackle, Daquan Jones, 37. Deion Walker, 26. Walker's battling out there and made that nice stop on an early, like the second play of the game, like working hard to the sideline. I thought the way he competed for his gap against the run was really strong in this football game. Jordan Phillips, 24. Larry Ogunjobi, 15. What a disappointment Larry Ogunjobi's been. The Bills paid him like a decent amount of money to come onto this team, and he's playing the least of any defensive tackle. The impact's not there. He's been horrible against the run, and there really hasn't been much pass rush impact. Like, that is looking like a horrible signing. And I like Larry Ogunjobi, but boy, he has not showed up and made really any positive impact to this football team. At linebackers, Shaq Thompson, all 60 snaps. Love you, Shaq. I love that guy. Just love the way he plays. Just look at the Christian Benford pick 6. Shaq Thompson is sprinting down the field as fast as he can. Everyone else is pointing and celebrating. Shaq Thompson's getting there, man. I love this guy. Matt Milano, 40 snaps. Dorian Williams, 11. Christian Benford played 59 of 60 snaps. The play after his pick 6, he sat that one out. So it was Trey White and Max Harrison on the field, and that was the play that A.J. Epinesa got the interception. So that was his one snap that he missed. Trey White, 36 snaps. Max Harrison, 25. Taron Johnson, 59. Ooh. Boy, I'm nervous about Taron. I really am. It's interesting, actually, when you heard Sean McDermott speak about Darnell Savage during his press conference on Monday, he kind of lit up a little bit, said, yeah, we've been interested in him for a while, like going back to the draft in 2019. And of course, the Packers made him the 21st pick in the draft. But he said, when he left in free agency to go to Jacksonville, when he was claimed off waivers to go to Washington, they've been tracking him, and now they got him. And I'll be honest, like, based on the way that Taron Johnson's playing, I'm not convinced that it's like an imminent thing, but I'm also not sleeping on Darnell Savage and his opportunity to maybe be the slot or be the dime defensive back next year, right? And so you get a good look at him this year and figure out if that's something that you can make work. But there's a lot that I like about Darnell Savage. So That's something I'm keeping an eye on. At safety, Jordan Poyer, 47 snaps. Man, he had some really outstanding run fills playing downhill from depth and fitting the run. He's really stabilized this defense in a lot of ways. Cole Bishop, 45 snaps. I really liked how he played in this game. Really good run fills, physical safety, guys coming across the middle. He'll clean them up. I like what Cole Bishop is doing. Jordan Hancock, 22. Ups and downs, right? Ups and downs with Jordan Hancock. It's good that he's playing through this, right? He'll be better for it, but you got to live with some of the mistakes that he makes. And Cam Lewis, 25. Studs and duds. We got a good list of studs here. Josh Allen, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, welcome back. Osiris Torrance and David Edwards. I thought this was a phenomenal game from both of those guys. I think the last two games from Osiris Torrance have been some of his best football, and so I thought those guys were outstanding. Christian Benford, Shaq Thompson. Let's toss Cole Bishop in here. Why not? I really enjoyed him. I didn't initially have him, but I'm putting him down. And then Sean McDermott. What a stud in this game. I mean, this guy absolutely coached aggressively. I think he knew some of the challenges that his team had in this one, and he coached to win. There's no doubt about it. The blitzing in the second half, the going for it on fourth downs, I thought he had the right stuff. I thought he had the right mindset for this game, and it showed, and I think is a big reason why the Bills were able to win. So studs again, Josh Allen, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Osiris Torrance, David Edwards, Christian Benford, Shaq Thompson, Cole Bishop, Sean McDermott. My duds, I got two of them, Cam Lewis and Taron Johnson. Boy, they were picked on. They missed tackles. They gave up completions. The touchdown to Gesicki there late was neither one of them knew what to do on the play. I don't know. Those guys really struggled. So put them as duds. But there you have it. The All-22 review for Bills, Bengals. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you'll come on back. We got herd mentality coming your way next, and then we'll get ready for this Patriots game. A big one, right? A lot at stake for both teams. We'll spend a lot of time the rest of the week getting ready for that. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.